NBA, in shock. Celtics become perfect destination for elite center. Bro, if you support the Celtics or are just tired of seeing this team suffer in big games, this video is for you. Every year the same thing. Strong squad, flying attack, but there's a lack of that elite pivot to hold down rebounds, protect the rim, and decide playoff series. Today, I'm going to show you why an elite center may have found the perfect destination in the Celtics and how it would completely change the future of the franchise. So stay with me in these first few minutes, because the solution to this pain may be closer than it seems. Before we get into the details of this possible elite center for the Celtics, here's the following. If you breathe NBA, subscribe to the channel now, because here we always exchange ideas about behind the scenes, rumors, and analysis without any hassle. Enjoy and leave a like, because this shows YouTube that you enjoy this type of content and helps me a lot to bring you more videos like this. And of course, activate the bell so you don't miss out when hot news comes out about trades, free agency, and playoffs. Now, let's follow the video, because I'm going to show you step by step why this fit could change the future of the Celtics and what this means for the entire NBA. Imagine the following scene with me. You sit down to watch a Celtics game after a hard offseason. Kristaps Porzingis is no longer there. Al Horford is gone. Luke Kornet also left in free agency. The team that, not long ago, seemed to have one of the most complete squads in the league, suddenly looks at its own bottle and sees a void. Yes, Neemias Queta has unfolded. He took on a huge responsibility, grew, matured, showed resources that many people didn't even imagine he had. But deep down, if the talk is to seriously fight for the title again, the problem is different. To be a champion in the NBA, especially in long playoff series, it is not enough to do well. You need to have someone who commands respect, who makes opponents think twice before attacking the rim. This is where this story starts to get really interesting, because when we talk about a consolidated presence protecting the bottle, one name starts to gain strength behind the scenes: Ivica Zubac. And the reason is no small matter. The Los Angeles Clippers center is seen today as one of the franchise's greatest trade assets. In a scenario in which the Clippers are wavering, facing difficulties, and beginning to flirt with the idea of rethinking the project, Zubac appears as a valuable piece, capable of yielding draft picks, young talent, and opening a new horizon for Steve Ballmer's team. On the other side, there is the Boston Celtics, who are at a silent crossroads. The team is good, competitive, has stars, has a winning culture, has a heavy shirt. But something very specific is missing: a pillar in the bottle. Not just someone who completes the quintet, but a player capable of organizing the defense from the rim, controlling rebounds, disturbing every attack that tries to finish close to the basket, and still contributing consistently in the attack. It is precisely at this point that some analysts begin to connect the dots. Brett Siegel from Clutch Points mentioned that Zubac has attracted interest on the trade market and pointed to the Celtics as a possible interesting destination for the center. He is not saying that there is a negotiation in progress. He is not saying anything. It is a reading, an opinion based on the reality of the two teams and the needs of each one. But it is an opinion that makes sense. Let's look calmly at Boston's side. When you look at the current roster, you notice a clear hole in the frontcourt rotation. Porzingis' departure takes away an offensive and defensive reference. Horford, beyond all his experience, was a silent organizer, someone who read the game like few others. Kornet, even though he wasn't a star, offered important minutes in the rotation. All of this disappears at once. Who is left to handle this scolding? Neemias Queta. He has energy, physique, desire, and has shown progress in reading the game, positioning, stump timing, sealing well inside the box. However, as encouraging as his growth is, it is a lot to put on the shoulders of a player who is still establishing himself in the league. In a playoff series, any detail becomes a target. Smart teams will try to exploit this inexperience. Now think about the contrast of having Zubac in this scenario. We are talking about a pivot who has already shown that he is capable of being among the best defenders in the NBA. In a recent season, he was among the top names in Defender of the Year voting and made one of the league's top defensive teams. He is not a promise. He is an established player. with a resume, with a proven impact. In numbers, Zubac comes from a phase where he produces solid scoring, dominates rebounds on both sides of the court, and even distributes some passes, helping to keep the attack flowing. But, more than statistics, what calls attention is the way he participates in the game. He closes the rim well, he contests shots, he absorbs contact, he doesn't hide in decisive moments. It's that type of pivot that gives security for the entire defensive system to work. And that's exactly what Boston misses. With a player like that anchoring the defense, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown could focus more on their primary tasks without having to constantly make up for holes in the paint. Perimeter defenders would have the confidence to put more pressure on the ball, knowing that if the opposition manages to infiltrate, there will be a strong presence waiting inside. In attack, Zubac is not an offensive star in the classic sense, but he is extremely efficient. He knows how to position himself in the pick and roll, offers tough blocks, provides clear passing lines, and finishes with high performance close to the rim. On a team with creators capable of attracting double marking, like Tatum, Brown, and other perimeter players, a center with good timing and safe hands becomes even more dangerous. And there is a detail that often goes overlooked. The arrival of a pivot of this level does not cancel Neemias Queta. On the contrary, it could be just what he needs to take off. With Zubac assuming the role of starter, Queta could act more calmly from the second unit, facing reserves, having more room to make mistakes and learn. He would continue to grow, but without having the obligation to resolve everything now. From the Clippers' perspective, the logic is also clear. If the board understands that the current team's ceiling has already been tested and is not enough to fight with the league's big forces, a partial or total reconstruction becomes an option. At this time, players like Zubac start to be seen as valuable exchange pieces. A consistent pivot, in good form with real impact and an interesting age, will always attract interest. And teams like the Celtics, who are looking for exactly this profile, enter the scene. The idea raised by analysts is that Boston could put together a package involving draft picks and pieces that fit the Clippers' needs. There are those who talk about the possibility of including a point guard or winger at the end of his contract, someone who will help balance salaries and pave the way for the Clippers to rethink their offensive structure. There is nothing confirmed, but this type of scenario comes to be discussed when two realities intersect. A team that needs a ready pivot and another that perhaps is ready to listen to proposals. It is important to reinforce. So far, we are talking about readings, projections, market interpretations. No one is guaranteeing that the Celtics will bring Zubac tomorrow, nor that the Clippers have already made the player officially available. But the theoretical fit is too strong to ignore. And that is exactly why the subject gains so much strength when it appears. Now, let's go back to the Boston fan, to you who follows the team and feels every playoff defeat, every sequence of offensive rebounds given up, every easy infiltration that ends in a tray. You can imagine the impact of a player like Zubac in these decisive moments. How many possessions would end differently? How many second chances would the opponent miss? How many times would the attack be calmer knowing that back there is someone supporting the structure? A center of this level does not solve absolutely all of a team's problems, of course, but he plays exactly in the part of the game that usually decides balanced series. Defense in the paint, rebounding, physical presence, rim protection. In a league that is increasingly spaced out, in which teams abuse the perimeter, yet in the final stretch of a big game, a lot of things are decided close to the basket. And having someone capable of controlling this region is a huge difference. From a management point of view for Brad Stevens, it would be one of the most impactful moves in his career as responsible for assembling the squad. Alongside Joe Mazzulla, he would basically be saying, we have our stars, we have our perimeter, we have our identity. Now let's protect the bottle. It's a clear message of ambition. It's the kind of move that changes the way the rest of the league looks at the Celtics. Of course, there is another side, the market. Zubac is not the type of center who goes unnoticed. Other teams looking to reinforce the bottle would certainly also observe the situation. Teams with similar needs, with interesting draft picks and promising young players could enter the contest. This means that any attempt by Boston needs to be aggressive, well-planned, and quick. In a race like this, those who hesitate tend to be left behind. Therefore, if this scenario becomes reality and the Clippers really make Zubac available, the Celtics' stance needs to be firm. Evaluate the cost of choices, analyze who can be involved in the exchange without dismantling the main core, understand the impact on the team's ceiling, and, in addition, take it from there. Act. There is no perfect movement. There will always be risk. But giving up an opportunity like this also brings a huge risk, that of seeing another title candidate strengthen precisely with the player who would solve his problem. Meanwhile, Neemias Queta continues to do what he can to hold the line. Each game is a chance to show that he deserves space, that he can be an important piece for many years. It's a curious dilemma for the franchise. Bet all its chips on internal development, or look for a solution already consolidated on the market. Often, the ideal answer lies somewhere in the middle, and the combination of a solid starter like Zubac with a rising backup like Queta could be just that. Ultimately, this conversation isn't just about a name. It's about the vision of the future that the Boston Celtics have for themselves. It's about deciding whether the team wants to be competitive or, in fact, wants to place itself as one of the favorites for the title. It's about understanding that, in such a balanced league, details like the right pivot can be the difference between falling in the conference semifinals or lifting the trophy at the end of the season. If Zubac wears the green jersey one day, you can be sure the entire NBA will take notice. The impact would not only be technical, but symbolic. The message that Boston is willing to do whatever is necessary to close the gaps in the squad and finally transform potential into achievement. And until then, this possibility continues to hang in the air, fueling debates, analyses, expectations, and, above all, the imagination of those who dream of seeing the Celtics at the top of the league again. So, now I want to hear from you. Is a center like Zubac the missing piece for this Boston Celtics to finally turn expectations into titles? Or do you think the team needs to follow another path? Because if this movement happens, it won't just change the bottle. It changes the way the entire league looks at Boston, changes the weight of each playoff game. It changes the responsibility on Tatum, Brown, Mazzulla, and it also changes the way the fans see themselves in this project. The question that remains is simple and at the same time gigantic. Are the Celtics ready to take this step and face the label of big favorite head-on? If you want to continue diving deep into these discussions, understanding fits, possible exchanges, tactical adjustments, and everything that can transform this team into a monster in the NBA, do the following. After you finish this video, go to the Celtics Analysis playlist, which will be in the pinned comment. There I gathered all the videos in which I break down the team piece by piece, scenario by scenario, always thinking about what can really take Boston from candidate to champion. Click on the playlist, marathon the episodes, and come with me, because the history of the Celtics is still being written, and we will follow each chapter together.